A+ curriculum mapping. Our purpose is to make curriculum mapping doable and purposeful. Creating a year-long plan begins with mapping the first unit of study. This PowerPoint could be used in the order that is presented, or you can skip around to the sections you need.
As we begin, it's important to establish a common vocabulary. We begin by guiding a discussion. Ask your participants to define what they use for curriculum and what things influence their planning decisions, their calendars, pacing guides, and then let them know the phrases that are on the slide are words that will be defined as we go through the mapping process. There's really no need to go into a lot of details at this point. There are many ways to define each, so clarifying how A+ defines each term is very important. Our goal for the mapping process is to create a curriculum map for the first unit of study, define and create essential questions and overarching concepts, and begin creating integrated lessons with focus questions that relate back to the overarching concept and the essential questions.
We begin with these questions that will guide our work.
The cycle of integrated unit planning is a graphic organizer that can be found in your common documents. Curriculum mapping can really begin at any component in the cycle and will volley back and forth between them as the planning progresses and the unit is implemented. There will always be going back and forth between concepts and skills and connections, as well as the whole cycle. So keep this graphic organizer handy. Also let them know that they have a copy of it in their binder, and that way they can come back to it. Participants can work through the process with this so that they have a point of reference and can see how what they're working on fits with the other components.
In general, we're always answering these essential questions. The answer changes as we grow in our understanding and our application. Later, we'll look at how we decide on an overarching concept and how we write essential questions. If you're using this PowerPoint with your school, you'll want to change the overarching concept to match the one for your purpose. For returning schools, it's a good idea to revisit the essentials. A purposeful way to do this is to use the essentials to set goals. They don't need to be shared out with everyone. This is just for each participant's personal reflection.
It's really important to go over the triple track agenda with your participants. This is a handout in the new school binder that you can refer to. You can show it up in a poster, but after sharing the 3 tracks, acknowledge that there are many different levels of expertise and everyone can benefit from the curriculum mapping process, whether they're learning new material and doing this for the first time, whether they've done it before and they adopt, adapt, or create, or if they're going to need to share this with other team members and they need to pay attention to the steps in the facilitator's model track.
It's time to go to work. Before breaking into groups to work, ask participants to clarify what they brought with them to plan curriculum. Make sure everyone has a place to work. Specialists can start by identifying their own first unit goals and then going to each grade level's map to collaborate and look for commonalities. ELL and others that work with special groups can join a grade level, or they can rotate to different groups to share their thoughts and look for connections to their work. You can even involve participants in a discussion about how they can best work. Invite the principal to observe each team's work and join in the collaboration. There have been times that principals have even mapped their own year. There is no set way to divide. Each school has to do what works best for them, but everyone should be a part of the process. Sharing out gives you good feedback on their progress and helps them see how their work fits with others in their school. Decide how much time they need before they check in. Sometimes participants need a visual to get them started. This is one possibility. Each content area is a different color, and literacy is divided by the sections of Common Core. If they don't use Common Core, you can always have them divide it into sections that make sense to them. They could adopt it as it is, adapt it to fit their needs, or create something new. Secondary schools may want a web that has different departments as stems around an overarching concept. If the overarching concept and the essential questions have not been created, that's okay. They may emerge as participants identify a common thread between the content areas. Here's the same chart in a blank form. This could be left on the screen as a reference as participants work. You could give each team a blank chart pad and let them create their own web.
This is just another example of a different way you might format this type of map. This one was created by myself. I'm a secondary music teacher, and I don't have a collaborative team at my high school, so I chose an overarching concept that would be meaningful to my students, where they could relate to it regardless of what other classes they went throughout the day. It's very similar to our umbrella chart that you can find in common documents.
As participants share their work so far, one fellow will facilitate the conversation and another will scribe words that jump out of the conversation. Write words that are both topics and conceptual ideas. This list is going to be used later as you begin identifying overarching concepts.
If you just let your participants have a break, it's a good idea to come back with an experiential activity. We chose the connections game. You can find a copy of this in your common documents, and we used it to help participants reflect on the work they had already done. As they connect with a partner, you might use questions like these. What was easy about beginning to map? And then when they go to another partner, ask, what was difficult about the process? And then with their third partner, ask, how are you feeling about mapping your curriculum? Process the experience as a whole group, and then have them return to their tables.
As we begin learning more about the overarching concept, these are the questions that will guide our work. Have a conversation with participants about the purpose of using a big idea. Many times we know why we're teaching a skill, but when it is taught in isolation, the student may not see the purpose.
This criteria was developed by a group of fellows working with a new A-plus school. Go through this list with your participants. Then, as a whole group, go back to the list that was generated through the conversation when participants shared their first step of planning, and let them identify which are topics and which could be considered as an overarching concept. Be sure to clarify that both topics and overarching concepts are important. The topics will appear within the unit in the integrated lessons. If they seem to understand, then you can move on to essential questions. But if there's confusion, you might look through the facilitating cycle document in your common docs and choose one of the activities there to help them clarify overarching concepts. If they understand what overarching concepts are, but they haven't yet decided on one for their map, that's okay. It's still all right to go on to the next step with essential questions. Those overarching concepts might emerge as they start asking themselves what they want their students to know and be able to do.
Here's where we start to think about the questions that guide our planning and foster student understanding. You might show how essential questions go with the overarching concept, and focus questions are more specific to lessons or content areas. You could also use a curriculum map to point out where the essential questions are written.
Share these characteristics and give examples. A good starting place is to think about what you want students to understand about the overarching concept. What do you want them to know and be able to do? Essential questions might start with what, why, and how questions. Remember, too many words in the questions may make them too specific to be essential questions. The more specific questions would be focus questions. We want these to be broad and go along with our overarching concept.
Go over this slide with participants and then have them collaborate on the overarching concept and essential questions. You may want to go back to the criteria for overarching concepts or the characteristics of essential questions for reference as they work. You can ask which they need and then display them on the PowerPoint. Now
give participants time to work. Decide on a time to come back and share. And after sharing out, talk to your team and plan the next steps for your school. They may need time to work, or they may be ready to begin zooming in to work on an integrated lesson. Once you have this basic foundation, participants are ready to move to the integrated lesson. This should include things that they have been inspired by in their 101s and elective workshops. You may want to use the green curriculum planners to inspire their lesson creation. You may also want to give them an integrated lesson experience and have them identify the objectives from their curriculum and the arts, and then discuss the more complex thinking skills that integrated lessons nurture.
As you plan an integrated lesson for your school, think about their student population, special interests, or other information they've provided to personalize the lesson. The lesson format is just one way to plan. First, you can share the objectives or the goal for the lesson. Then, hook your participants by helping them make a personal connection to the content. As you move through the lesson, first the teacher explanation, which is the me part, then a whole group discussion or activity, that's the we part. Then they work in smaller groups, 2 or 3 or a few more. And finally, students do some kind of individual activity to demonstrate understanding. That's the you part. This format is used for facilitation, but it could also be a format they use in their classrooms. This slide has examples of things you might consider as you facilitate an integrated lesson with A+ participants. This is very general and can be adapted to your school's personal needs. Hopefully, this slide will just help your team plan an experience for your school. As a way to reflect on the activity, you might use the green curriculum planners. After the activity, ask participants to look through them and then popcorn out words they see in the planners that they experienced in the integrated lesson.
Participants go to work using their own curriculum map. Ask them how long they'd like to work before checking in, or have them check in 10 to 15 minutes before the end of the session to share what they've done so far or obstacles they have encountered.
Your participants are off to a great start. This list provides ideas for next steps. Participants should have a voice in choosing what their next step will be. Celebrate their success and enjoy the process.
This PowerPoint is available for your use. You can contact your Oklahoma A+ staff if you're unsure where to download the PowerPoint, and our instructions, what we've been reading from today, are available within the notes. Thanks so much.